back. I had intended to work more on this yesterday, but got extremely sick, and I'm not feeling super good today, but we're going to push on. So I found that little piece, and because I don't want to wait for a lot of drying time, I'm going to do something it's a little workaround. I'm going to use this liquid skin, the liquid Band-Aid stuff. I have around all the time because I have little cracks and splits in my skin all the time. I mean, it's essentially like nail polish or super glue, so it's gonna dry really quickly, so I don't have to wait so long. I just happen to have a bunch of it around, so we're gonna go for it. Hopefully it sticks well. It's already got the makings of looking like it might not stick well, so we'll see. Okay. So I'm thinking about this little corner here, about how I might be able to cover that up with some information, or I might be able to paint that out. So I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do just yet with that, but there we go. I am going to go in here and bold up some of this line work for the male face, because I'm going to go ahead and add some paint to him. Having the bolded line work will help me work kind of over it without losing my information. And I'm just going to be using some like liquid watercolors, rather gouache. Acrylic paint would do fine, tempera, whatever. Pan watercolor is going to be a little bit it's going to be a little light, so something to kind of consider. Okay. Yeah, my little trick did not work here. Dried too fast. All right. Let's move faster then, huh? And maybe hold it down this time. Okay, so I'm using just my primary colors here and some black. Usually when I use watercolor media, the whole idea is that I'm using the white of the paper as the white. Of course, if I were going to be doing this in like acrylic medium or something, it's not going to be the case. White watercolor does exist. Chinese white is what it's called. It just doesn't have the same kind of like cover up and block out potential that the acrylic will have. Okay. So I'm going to use some of this watered down a little bit, and some of it I'm going to use like very thick. Let's stay on there. It's acting like it wants to pop up again. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of my blue off here and water it down a little bit. I'm just going to add some straight water to this. You can see there's a little pigment left in my brush, and that's fine. But I'm just going to get a good deal of water on here and allow this to kind of flow. I'm going to try to keep it wet while I'm doing this. I can do is I can kind of thin this out as I'm working too. Like in this eye, there's a little too much pigment, so I'm adding some water to that. I'm just kind of moving it around a little. I just kind of want like a loose, washy look to start with, and then I'm going to work over it when it dries. It's just an effect I happen to really enjoy, so this thing is going to come up every time. I'm going to have to use hot glue. The other thing that's kind of cool about this is that while your watercolor's active, you can pull some out with like a clean paper towel or something to expose some highlights. Maybe I don't want them to have really blue teeth, so I might pull some of that out. A little bit over the eye here, just to get some of that. Get just a touch in here as well. Let me get a little bit of color up in the hair area. But you can kind of see like where I accidentally got some glue on the paper. It's acting a little funny, like it's trying to resist the water to some degree. If that happens to you, you can just kind of keep scrubbing it until it does work. I'm just going to do a gradation on this. Like I'm going to go with pretty intense red across the top. And while it's wet, I'm just going to kind of work it down and allow it to gradate. Here we go. Get it to move and be a little bit fluid. I'm liking that pretty well. Okay. Okay, so I let it dry just a little bit, and I'm resuming because I'm wanting to do some work now here. When I have an adjacent area that's wet, it's going to be hard for me to do that. I end up having to use Elmer's glue on this guy, so shortcuts aren't going to work, I guess. So I want to do something with the hair that's going to capitalize on like the flowy aspect of it. So I'm going to do a technique that has become really, really popular lately. It's just essentially a squeegee technique, and I'm going to practice it just a little bit first to make sure that, I like what I get out of it, because I can't really go back if I mess it up. So I'm putting some kind of thicker applications of the paints that I prepared here. And these are pretty flowy at this point. They're not super wet though, because I need them to actually be able to stay put in some areas. Where's my other paintbrush? There it is. And we'll add some blues in between there, maybe on this side. Looks like I might have to add more red. It's trying to dry up on me. So I'm just like adding some beads of this. You don't have to use this technique. I just thought I'd show y'all how I do it. And, it's been so popular, I thought, why not address it? So having these lined up and everything, I'm just going to take a card that I've already pre-cut. It's old mat board. I apply it, and I'm just going to push and pull like so, like to kind of get some stripes, right? So that's showing me I should probably get my stuff closer together. So I think where I'm going to go first is, let's add, I'm going to add a good deal of orange here. Maybe one stripe. Right there. Go ahead and put my red in between. I am not liking this brush. It separates on the outside. I should have got a better brush for this, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll alternate, put a little bit red here, just a touch. I'm getting my colors closer together so they actually do touch. And I'm going to throw some blue on the back of that, closer to the back of the head, to kind of help with some shading. Okay. Like that pretty well. Worked out. Cool. Let's see, I'm gonna try that in some of the other places too. That came out nice. Let's see, I'll add a good deal here. Looks like she got her hair custom colored. That's how you say it. I have no idea. I have the luxury of not having to worry about hair care, except for shaving it. Add this down here. Put one right here. And I think I'm going to punctuate everything else with red. They mixed in a little bit there. That should be interesting. Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that pretty well. Just gonna do a second little print there. I might let that hair go crazy and invade that other side. Let's see, I think on the other side we'll go for some. Add some blue there, because I know that that's going to be a darker area. A little bit of red on the outside of the head here. Then I'll punctuate that with some orange. I'm just going to continue that color scheme by hand here. So I want to be a little bit more precise, closer to the head. I don't want to blend this up too much because I know if I mix all these colors together, like if I, just kind of keep blending, I'm going to end up with something close to brown. When you mix all your primaries together, you end up with brown. In theory, you would actually end up with black, but that doesn't work unless you have like the most pure of pigments that are extremely high quality. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry for a little bit. Then we're going to move on to another area. All right, so we've dried out a little bit here. I'm going to begin working on this this female figure. I'm just going to drop some colored pencil down to get some base colors. Then I'm going to start clarifying things like the eyes and the nose and the shading that I traced over from my reference image. And once I get some of this watercolor paint to dry, I'm going to go back over it with some colored pencil and marker and stuff to kind of shade it and model it. One reason that I'm applying this pink all over the place is because I have a whole bunch of extra excuse me, oil pastel and colored pencil that transferred onto the white spaces of the paper, and I don't want that to show up, so choosing a color close to the colors that like had accidentally transferred is going to help to hide that. Like having all of that pink around those like darker colors like this and this, it's going to make it less evident to people. It'll still be there, but it's one of those tricks to hide mistakes, right? Or make it not a mistake, more or less. You get a crazy idea for some mixed media on this thing, stuff that I haven't included, please feel free. You want to drop some stickers on there, do more transfers, you want to do some splatter painting, you know, you get a crazy cool idea, run with it. This is just as much about expression as it is about experimentation and discovering what works for you media-wise. And this is a great lesson for kids just because it takes out that whole need for drawing stuff really realistically. That way they can just work with things like color. Oh wow, I'm looking at that. Barely can see that on my recording. That's interesting. Now, of course, we will work with just straight up drawing skills. But for this assignment, it's more about like using color and creating a good concept, composition. Just gonna add a little bit of mulberry on the edge. Kind of shade a little bit. Deepen up that pink. It's kind of hard to see on my screen, sorry. Areas that I know I'm gonna have darker, like where this cheekbone might be, I'm gonna go ahead and shade that in to some degree. Maybe underneath the eye just a little bit, but I don't want to do too much there because I don't want to lose what I'm looking at. It's kind of hard to see my green transfer. So I think I'm going to go in there with my Sharpie then, and I'm going to bring it back like I did with the male figure, or portrait rather. And I kind of trace what I see in there. If I feel like I need to add more information, I will. Let's see, I think I'm just going to make a very simple version of the nose tracing that I've got in here. I don't want to make it too complex. Sometimes less is more when you're working with noses, especially with a frontal nose like this. We don't want a whole lot of explanation. We just want to know where the nostrils should go, probably. I'm going to go and outline the lips, but I think I'm going to work with those in colored pencil. This is kind of looking like a Warhol Monroe right now, and I'm kind of thinking I might go with that as sort of an inspired element. I love Andy Warhol. He's one of my favorite artists. So yeah, let's get some pink in there. We're going to drop some red over it. mixing that pink and that vermilion is going to make for a pretty bold color. I'm just going to fill it in. Kind of thinking, what would Warhol do, right? Warhol would give us a solid color in there, and he would probably misregister it because that's his game. That's how he rolls. Like that pretty well. Okay. I think I'm going to go ahead and bring back some of the striations of the lip, just because I know it'll help with some shading. So I'm just using some cross contour line work here. Going to reinforce that contour since I kind of went over it a little bit. There we go. Pretty happy with that. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of shading in the eyes. Again, I'm kind of thinking Warhol-y here. 1970s makeup. I guess it's kind of coming back. Get some crazy eyeshadow or whatever that stuff's called going on. It does kind of take me back to the 80s and the 70s a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a white. It's kind of, it may be hard to see this on my screen, but like I have that pink and that mulberry together, and I want them to blend. And so when you're using watercolor, or rather colored pencils, you can use your white colored pencil to blend two colors together, because it really, as you can see, does not show up as white. What it does is it sort of just carries the pigment with the pressure of your finger or your hand. So I want to kind of get smooth transitions on this figure. I think I'm going to treat the male figure a little differently. They make colored pencil blenders, which essentially are like the waxy elements inside of colored pencil without the pigment. There we go. It looks like my hair is finally dry enough that I can go in there and mess around with it a little. So I'm just going to use my colored pencil to kind of shade along with some of the stuff I have in there. So like if I have a spot that didn't print very well when I was doing that, I can go in there and I can touch that up. Again, I'm just going to let the hair go crazy. I'm going to allow that hair to dominate this figure. So I'm kind of extending my blues here. Some of this paper's a little bit wet though, so like I'm trying to be careful not to destroy it.